Welcome to Adobe Illustrator CC 2021, Classroom Book Chapter 11 about gradients, blends, and patterns. This is part number 2. So when we left off, we had just barely finished creating the hot dog bun, and now we're going to turn this, what looks like a pink sun, into some ketchup. So with our selection tool, let's go ahead and grab that pink sun, and let's go to the fill box over on the properties panel and change it to the black and white gradient. As we know, that just gets us started on the gradient. Let's go to the gradient options here at the bottom and hit the escape key to hide those swatches. And let's go ahead and hit the fill box to make sure that we are working on the stroke and not the fill. No, the fill, not the strokes. Let's make sure we're on the front one. All right, and then we want to make sure that we are using the radial gradient, so it's the middle one. And let's do a Control S and save what we have so far. So now we're going to go ahead and edit the colors in that gradient. So we're going to select the gradient tool over on the toolbar. And from there, we're going to go ahead and, with the circle still selected, we're going to do the reverse gradient button, which on the gradient panel, it's the third thing down on the left. Reverse the gradient. And let's do a couple Control Plus to zoom in, see what we've got a little bit better. And now let's go ahead and move the pointer over the gradient annotator and the ellipse. We want actually the second circle here. And we want to double click and make it so it's not black. We're going to go ahead and change it to the orange red, which is down here. And let's hit escape to hide that swatches panel. And now let's change the white, double click. And let's go ahead and change it to red. And escape again to hide that. So now we've got kind of what looks like a little bit of a moon. So let's do a Control S and or sun, not a moon. Let's go ahead and adjust that gradient. So with the gradient tool selected over in our toolbar and the circle still selected, we're going to drag the center of the circle to change the gradient in the circle. So we're going to go ahead and drag. So let's go ahead and drag it from here down. So we get kind of that right on the edge, we're going to make that color. So we can also play with it a little bit more. We can play with the spread and the aspect ratio. So let's go ahead and rotate the ring. So the black point on the ring is for changing the aspect ratio, and the other dot is for creating the spread. So let's go ahead and come over this top one right here. Oh, let's do this black circle first, it wants us to do. And let's go ahead and drag it. So you can see we're making the gradient a little bit different. And now if we drag this other one, you can see how we can change the way that gradient is fitting as well. So I'm pretty happy with that one. And let's go ahead and hit our selection tool. Now we're going to shift drag and make it a little bit smaller. So we're actually going to make this into ketchup. So it's about half the size. And we're going to drag it down here on top of the hot dog. And we're going to go ahead and create, let's go ahead and do a view, fit artboard and window so we can kind of see the whole thing. And let's make a whole bunch of ketchup. So I'm going to hit Alt. Just keep hitting Alt until I decide I've got enough ketchup going on. Change where it's up and down. Totally up to you as to what you're going to do with your ketchup. Oh, undo. That one looks a little weird. I feel like I need one in between there. All right, so totally up to you what your ketchup is going to look like. Mine looks a little bit weird, but that's okay. I'm all right with it. All right, so let's do select and deselect in case you haven't, and a Control S to save. So go ahead and make sure you've created as much ketchup as you like. So now we're going to go ahead and apply some gradients to multiple objects. We're going to go ahead and play with the windows. So we've got our view on artboard in case you moved it at all. Now with our selection tool, we're going to go ahead and select these blue windows. Then we're going to shift click and grab these other windows on the truck as well. Now we're going to go to the fill box over on properties. And let's go ahead and grab that background swatch that we created. And you're going to see that it is going to create that background swatch on each one. It has it applied separately, and each one has its own annotation bar, which you might not want. So now we can go ahead and apply that gradient across those shapes. So let's go ahead and kind of drag across. Oh, that's going to move them all. Undo. Let's grab our gradient tool. And now we can see each one has its own bar. So let's go ahead and drag across, drag down kind of, and see how each one, now they're all kind of going together. So I don't love that. Let's go ahead and make it kind of muddy. That's not terrible. We'll leave it there. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and deselect. And we're going to go ahead and work on the cloud next. So let's go ahead and create some transparency for our cloud so it kind of looks like it's floating up there. Let's go ahead and grab our selection tool and grab the cloud itself. Now in the gradient panel, we want to ensure that the fill box is chosen. So we've got the fill box. And let's go ahead and select white and black to apply that generic gradient. And with the gradient tool, we want to drag just above the cloud down to the bottom edge at a little bit of an angle. So let's make sure we've got our gradient tool. And let's go ahead and change that gradient just a little bit. Not loving that. Let's go ahead and do, that's not terrible. Maybe a little bit more. All right. So it's not going to look like this. We've got a little bit of changes, few changes to make sure. So the pointer over the shape, let's go ahead and double click on the black color stop. So let's pick this black color stop. And let's go ahead and choose our swatches. With our swatches, let's go ahead and grab that sage color called cloud. It's kind of at the end. And choose 0 for opacity. And now it's completely transparent at the other end. So let's do a tab or enter. So now we can kind of see how it's blending in, but we can still see some color. So now let's go ahead and drag the bottom color stop up just a little bit and kind of shorten the way that gradient is looking. And let's go ahead and make sure we take that stroke off this shape. So let's grab our selection tool. Let's make sure we grab our shape and turn that stroke off. So now we have no stroke. So we've got kind of this funky little cloud shape floating in the air, which is awesome. And let's go ahead and add a few more clouds. So let's grab selection and alt. And it's okay to go off the edge. Totally up to you as to where you're going to put your clouds. And put some over here. Let's move this over a little bit. Let's grab another one. That's really cool what you can do with these kind of transparent shapes. All right, so now I have some clouds. Let's go ahead and do a Control S and save. And I'm going to go ahead and break this one. So we'll see you in part 3.